that tape right there, however you want. And let me just demonstrate first. You're going to put your arms out for balance, you're going to close your eyes, and you're going to march right on that spot for 50 marches or whatever you can do comfortably, okay? So arms out, close your eyes, and march. 1, 2. 11, 12. 19, 20. 29, 30. 40, 41, 42. See how when I talk, he turns towards me? 4, 45. And stop. So it wasn't bad. But did you tell that he was going by what he heard, not just by what he, what he felt? You right? As soon as you heard my voice, you're like, oh, wait, she's moved. And did you tell as soon as he heard my voice, he moved back? And normally I don't count, but I wanted you to see that it's important you count, but don't do it out loud, because they can cue into that. And even I had one patient who, we have these sort of track lights in our clinic, and they're warm, they're hot. And so he had the track light on his hand when he started, and you could tell when he was getting outside of the light, like he was using the heat from the light, because he couldn't feel it here, right? So normally, your inner ear gives you your relationship to gravity, right? If you're tipping or bending or turning. Now, if you did that test with your eyes open, you wouldn't move at all, right? Because you'd see the movement. But when you close your eyes, people usually travel and they usually turn towards the side of the weakness, usually, but not always. Okay? And so that's an interesting test. We should all try it because it is a little tricky. Now, everybody moves a little bit, but if you look on the PowerPoint presentation, it said usually less than 2 feet and usually turn less than 30 degrees. So everyone kind of ends up like right around here. So that was not an abnormal test, but you could tell he was substituting with what he heard a little bit. And that's smart. I mean, that's what smart people do. That's what people who've had this for a long time do. Because they figured it out. All right, so why don't you go ahead and sit back down on that for me? How do you feel? Are you feeling dizzy at all? All right. So I would have had him fill out the dizziness handicap inventory, before he came back, or if there was a problem with literacy or something, I would do it with him. So at university, sometimes you can't always guarantee that your patients are. So I usually just say, would you like to do this, or would you like me to read it for you? That keeps them from maybe being embarrassed if they can't read, or if they prefer it in Spanish, or something like that. So we're going to do a test that involves some movement of your head. So not only does your inner ear give you your information about where you are in space, but it tells you about how fast you're moving. Okay? And so I'm going to test a reflex that goes between your inner ear and your eyes, and it's called the vestibular ocular reflex. But basically, it's what allows you to move your eyes and your head at the same speed. All right? So the way I test this is, I'm going to tilt your head down, you're going to look right here at my nose, I'm going to gently move your head from side to side. Okay, we'll start off slow and then we'll move a little bit faster. So I just want you to keep looking right at my nose, okay? So I pitch his head 30 degrees down, why? Exactly, and so just look right at my nose, I'm going to gently go from side to side. Very good. Did the people right here see the corrective saccade? Did you guys see it? Okay, and then just real slowly look right at my face. But not on that side. Did you feel a difference in the left versus the right? Like symptom-wise, was it hard to stay focused? Yeah. And so that was a positive left. Now, a positive left head thrust test usually correlates to at least a 50% caloric weakness or more. And I think we posted an article that talked about how to make your, caloric weakness is one of the tests that they do in the workup for the vestibular system, and it involves putting warm and cold air or water into the ear, and it induces nystagmus. And if it doesn't induce nystagmus, then you don't have any function, or you have less function, and that's what they look at. Because normally those tests are provocative, which is why I want all of y'all, if you have a chance, to go and see the test done. It's terrible for the patient. Sometimes the patients throw up, sometimes they get real sick. They will not let you test them again. You test once, and I don't know if you've had that whole workup, but it's not fun.
So a healthy person throws up and you're like, okay, it's good?
Well, some people feel it even more than others. Like, so, there's a kind of a normal range of motion sensitivity out there. Like my husband can't get on a boat, which makes him real sick. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I wouldn't call him a vestibular deficit, but I just say that he's got sort of hypersensitivity. So some people are much more sensitive than others. Almost their system's almost like irritable, sort of. So that caloric testing determines with the lateral canal, because that's the one that's closest to the external ear canal. When they put the cold and warm in there, it induces the nystagmus because of the VOR. And so it's basically a test of the function. And so when I say caloric weakness, it means that, let's say someone has a 50% caloric weakness, it means they have 50% less vestibular function in the labyrinth on that particular side. So we could see on the left side that there was a corrective saccade. I'm not going to do it anymore because it can tend to make you feel a little uncomfortable, but
We can do it again.
I was like, if Marcus is okay, some of y'all can try it on him. It's not, this is very subtle. Like, he is very well compensated for his weakness on the one side. I don't think you've ever had anyone tell you how much it was affected, right?
50% because it's one-sided, or 50%? I didn't hear why.
It just, that's how they correlate. Like, I had her post a source that talks about the sensitivity and specificity of the head thrust test. It's a clinical test. It's not real specific. But it tends to correlate with a loss of vestibular function on that side. And typically,
Of
at least 50% to see a positive hop back. And so there's a good picture in the O'Sullivan, but it's like down and then hop back. So the eyes go with the head. Why do the eyes go with the head? The inner ear didn't give the brain enough information about how fast you're moving. And so the eyes went with the head and said, oops. And then when they realize it, they hop back on.
Why does it not give the brain the information quickly?
Because
the
there's
crystals
less
are in the way?
peripheral end organ working. Like, you're just not getting as much information from that side. So at faster speeds, you see this cutoff where the eyes don't know to move. And so they, by the time he feels it, he's like, oops. And so that's when you see that corrective saccade. Because they can tell that they're not on the target anymore. And so they'll hop back. And then they're using their saccade system, right? They're not using the VOR.
Okay. So it could be from a number of different things.
Yeah, labyrinthitis or concussion or trauma, or infection, lots of different.
I have a question. So you said his left had the catch back. Is it where you turn the head that you see, or which eye moves that you determine which was
Both
left?
eyes move together, typically.
Okay.
But you bring up an important point, because if you see one eye
Right.
moving separately from the other, you refer back to the doctor. Because if one eye is moving, not the other, what's that called? INO? Internuclear ophthalmoplegia. It's one of the first and most common signs of MS, when those two eyes don't move together.
man.
If you see one eye doing it and the other one stops, okay, refer back to doctor, because that's usually a sign of INO. That's one of the first and most common signs that come up with a lot of people with MS. So it's something that, it's a red flag.
Do you have patients get sick frequently when you're doing this?
I've been very lucky in that a lot of my patients come to me from ear doctors, and so they already have been given, they're aware what's going on, they know what's happening, but having said that, probably once every 3 months I'll have somebody who vomits. And I'm very good. I have a basin like right there. I don't know if you saw the basin in my little room there, but I have a little basin right there, and I'm very fast with it. I've only been thrown up on like twice, and I want to keep it. So if I'm really worried about somebody, I'll put on my white coat and my gloves, and we'll be ready.
Has anyone ever been mad at you afterwards?
And that bring up an important point. We're going to talk about this more in BPPV, because that's kind of where you tend to see those autonomic responses, which what the vomiting is sort of an autonomic response. But typically, I tell the patient everything. Do you see how I said, okay, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. If you feel at any time you need to stop, or please tell me. And it's real important to set that at the beginning, because otherwise they'll push through it, push through it, push through it, and they'll be like, And so if you explain to them that breaks are important, and you can take a break if you need to, and if you get, sometimes I'll talk to patients who are really irritable, like their system is real sensitive. I'll say, okay, think about your symptoms on a scale from 0 to 5. 5 is, get me the base and I'm going to hurl, right?
Yeah.
0 is nothing at all. If we get to a 4, we stop.
Yeah.
And that's important to tell them when they're doing their home exercise program too. Like, okay, you're here with me now, we have to do 30, 40 minutes in a row, and we do that because you're here now and we have to do that. But at home, you can do like 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, you do 2 minutes before we go to bed, and it still help your brain.
Right.
Different than maybe like a cardiovascular workout where you want them to do 30 to 40 minutes, all in a row. But even 10 minutes is training the brain. So that's an important point. Sometimes a patient won't tell you when they're sick. Like for instance, I had one patient, he was orthopedic surgeon. He'd had a tumor resected, so he had a complete 100% loss. And I gave him the exercises, and we're gonna go over exercises next time I come in. And I said, okay, I'll do these a couple times a day, and then come back. When he came back, he said, well, I'm doing the exercises in the bathroom. I said, really? Why's that? He said, well, that way when I throw up, I'm right there by the toilet. And I was like, yeah, I think I see a problem. He was doing it like 5 times a day, because he wanted to be better yesterday, right? He was high-powered, get back to work, And so overstimulation is just as bad as not doing anything, because your brain shuts down, right? It's too much.
Wow.
So that was kind of a basic evaluation. Did you notice I didn't use all of the different tests, right? Just from talking to him and kind of knowing his background and knowing that he's strong and an athlete, I picked the higher level tests. Another test that I'd also do on him would be the BEST test, the BESS, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with that one, but it's more like a sports concussion, going back to higher level kind of sporting kind of stuff, and I would have done that with him as well. So let's go back to the parallel bars, and I'll just demonstrate some of the best tests.